The Bookshop by G.d.Hancock. The sun rose slowly on another day, and Carol turned over in her bed, yawning at the day as if in defiance. Little did she know that the next few days would be like nothing she had ever known, and would change her life forever. The early morning traffic rattled by the one-bedroom, three-story apartment window Carol now called home. The occasional sound of sirens added to the morning chorus she had come to know since moving from London to downtown Nottingham. Carol reluctantly moved to the one-bedroom apartment, hoping to start a new life without the man she loved, a man she once shared her life with, her love, her hopes, and her dreams, now all memories that tormented her daily thoughts. The 22-year-old had to move forward with her life, and this was her way of coping with the pain, away from the people and places she had enjoyed with her now dearly departed Brian. Her lost love, Brian, had been killed in a road accident several months before her move to Nottingham. The move was against her parents' wishes, who could be a little overprotective, though loving at times. They thought it was too early after the accident for Carol to be on her own in a new city. But they took comfort in knowing their daughter was only a phone call away, and they could visit her at weekends. Carol pulled herself from the warmth of her bed and slipped her feet into her well-worn slippers, pausing momentarily to clear her head. She reluctantly made her way across the scantily clad room to the window and drew back the faded curtains, allowing the sunlight to flood in. The pigeons had been busy on her windowsill, leaving droppings visible through the dull, murky glass as she stared at the traffic in the street below. She thought, another day, another dollar, heading towards the shower, which sometimes seemed to have a mind of its own, running hot or cold at will. Once showered and having had a quick bite to eat, Carol dressed and made her way to the old bookstore. At the end of the day, it was a job that paid the bills, and jobs were thin on the ground. The bookshop was tucked away from the main road between taller buildings, which seemed to suck daylight from it, leading to lights burning during shop opening hours. The shop owner was pleasant, much older than Carol, well-dressed and polite. He lived above the shop with his cat, Raffles, but Raffles spent most of its time sleeping around the books downstairs. Carol didn't mind that, as Raffles was often company when the owner was away. The owner usually left the shop 3 times a week, leaving Carol in charge with his trusty cat, Raffles. Carol's days were filled with sorting books chronologically and generally tending to the occasional customer. The shop itself had been established back in the 1930s. There was little evidence of modernization that could be seen by the naked eye, with shelves overbrimming with books of all descriptions. The centerpiece of the bookshop displayed a glass cabinet that had seen better days in its appearance and held 3 very old books. The top book was named The Veil, while the other 2 books stacked below had no apparent names on their spines, rendering them impossible to categorize from the outside of the case. The case itself was always locked to the public. Carol thought little of the locked bookcase, as her mind was often filled with thoughts of Brian. The old bell above the well-worn door rang just before her coffee break. A small, chubby man appeared, and Carol exchanged pleasantries and continued her work. The man browsed the bookshelves until he finally focused on the glass case. He stopped momentarily and asked to look at the books in the glass case. "I'm afraid I do not have the key," Carol replied. "You will have to come back when the owner returns. Can I help you with anything else?" The man turned from the bookcase, looked at Carol, and walked slowly towards the door, glancing back at the bookcase before leaving the shop with the doorbell echoing behind him. The rest of the day slowly passed until the owner returned, clutching several carrier bags and looking a little windswept. Carol explained the situation regarding the chubby customer, while the owner made his way to the staircase with his shopping bags dangling from his hands. Raffles followed the owner, and they disappeared upstairs. Later that evening, back in her apartment, Carol thought more about the old books in the locked case. If anything, that train of thought briefly took her mind off Brian as she relaxed deeply into the old leather chair. Morning soon came around, and Carol found herself back at work in the bookshop, sorting through old copies of Gone with the Wind, when the cubby man from yesterday walked through the door amid the chinging sound of the old brass doorbell. "Hello," Carol chirped. "I will let the owner know you are here." Moments later the owner appeared, followed by Raffles. Carol continued working as the 2 men gathered around the glass bookcase. She could hear little of their conversation, Yet moments later, she noticed the owner unlocking the glass case, withdrawing the old books, and carefully placing them side by side on the shop counter. "Allow me to introduce Mr. Henry Oswald to you," the shop owner exclaimed, turning to Carol. "Very nice to meet you, sir," Carol replied, looking a little puzzled at the announcement. "Mr. Oswald would like to take these books." Carol moved over to the counter, followed by Raffles, who seemed slightly more clingy than usual. Carol was slightly taken aback by the book titles on the counter before her. The Veil Grimoire Shadows. Carol had no time to examine the book's contents before Mr. Oswald moved forward with an open briefcase. "Just place them in here if you would," he replied. Carol placed the books into the waiting briefcase, and no sooner had she done so than Mr. Oswald exited the shop, leaving the doorbell tinkling behind him. As Carol stood at the counter, the shop owner softly asked if that was her first encounter with the craft. "Well, yes, it was," Carol replied as Ruffles purred around her feet. From that day on, Carol found new meaning in life and began her future within the craft. On my last visit to the shop, I was delighted to discover that Carol was a fully fledged high priestess of her coven, with Mr. Oswald as her high priest. The old books were gifts from a previous owner, now passed to the Summerland and in use by Carol's coven to this day. The moral of this story is that life has many paths. Do pop into the shop when passing to see Carol and say hello to Raffles. Bye for now and merry part.